Morning, everyone. My name is Shereen Williams. I am the Chief Executive of the Local Democracy and Boundary Commission for Wales, and I'll be your chair for today and taking you through your last day with Academy Wales at summer school today. We are the people that are responsible for your electoral boundaries. So for those of you who are involved in local government elections last month, your new electoral ward, etc., that's as a result of the work that we do at the Commission. I'm also Secretary of the Boundary Commission for Wales. We're the people who are currently reducing the number of MPs in Wales from 40 to 32. That's a piece of work that we're working on right now. And I believe in 2024, we'll be starting work on the Senedd constituencies to facilitate the increase in the number of Senedd members. So that's a bit about what I do. I always like chairing Academy Wales events because they give me a bit of time in the beginning, in the middle, at the end to share some reflections. And I have to be honest, I actually struggled a bit to figure out what I wanted to reflect on in this few minutes we have together before I hand you over to Fee for your session with her. And I thought it'd be helpful for me to just share some reflections on the past 12 months, really. I know lots of people have reflected on what's happened during the pandemic, but as we've been sort of having a start-stop cycle of exiting the pandemic in the past 12 months, I personally have found it harder than being in lockdown, only because of the emotional aspect of starting and stopping and having to support my staff and team throughout that process. We spoke lots last year about the new normal, and I'm not really sure if we have actually settled in the new normal. It still feels very early days because we sort of got out of lockdown and everyone got really excited. We came back to the office, we started doing the rota, hybrid working, etc. And then we went back into lockdown and then up again, down again. And then January this year, we all had to stay home again. So I think from my perspective as a leader, it was actually far more challenging supporting staff throughout that process than lockdown, because lockdown was, now reflecting back, it was quite certain. We knew what the rules were, what was going to happen, which dates, whereas it was slightly different with the start and stop. And I think for those of us who are here today, we are in public. I know you guys had Paul Matthews chairing on Monday, and on day one, and he was actually one of the chief execs I worked for when I was working in local government, and he's one of my favorite people. That is, and my favorite leaders actually, and an inspiration for me. I take a lot of my leadership style from him. And he used to say when I was working in Monmouthshire that public service is a calling. I don't know about you, but I'm not sure anybody joins the public service for the money. Um, you can probably earn more in the private sector or doing something else. But, public service is a calling. We join public service and we work in public service because we want to make a difference. We feel very strongly about it. We link our aspirations, our career advancements, our development to the work we do and what we want to become 10, 20 years down the road. And I think one of the key things that I've learned in the past 12 months is, as a leader, as a manager, you will have to put in the emotional labor of supporting your team and your staff. And if your cup or your vessel is empty, or even if it's half empty, you're not going to be able to do that, because you have to make sure that you are constantly topped up to be able to support the people around you. And I think that is the challenge that comes with being a leader. That's the challenge that comes with being a manager, is that you are their emotional bedrock in the organization to help them transition from pandemic to hybrid to the start-stop of the new normal. That's on you. And obviously, you're here because you want to develop, you want to go to the next stage of your career. And the temptation is also to fill your plate up as full as possible with different responsibilities, with new agendas, with new areas of work. And the worry, or the trap to fall into, is that you fill it up so much that you've got this big, huge mess on your plate and you can't figure out what you're doing because it's just too full. And the question you need to ask yourself is, who puts you first? My answer to that is, the only person that can put you first is you. No one else can do that work for you. No one else can fill your cup for you. You have to take responsibility for saying, actually, I'm struggling right now. I need some help. I need some support. The fact that you're here, you've been here for the past 2 days, and this is your third day, and I know it's quite intense. And I think when we were in the setup in the green room earlier, somebody said that you guys were very chatty. You're a very chatty group apparently, and there's nothing wrong with that. When I was in secondary school, I'm originally from Singapore. I went to an all-girls school in Singapore, and we were very academically inclined as a school. And we had 9 classes in our GCSEs, and each class had about 30 to 40 girls. And if any of you know what what it's like in Singapore, it's schools are very intense. There's a lot of pressure, and in our GCSE year, the last 6 classes of the year, our principal wanted to put us in something equivalent to special measures because we were apparently quite naughty, and they were worried about whether we would achieve academically, and we were the best of the worst. So there was a debate between her and my form tutor on whether we should go into special measures, and we were described as, oh, but your class is, his name was Mr. Lim, my teacher, and my head teacher said, Mr. Lim, your class is very boisterous, as though that's some sort of like reason to put people into equivalent special measures. And he said that yes, they're boisterous, but in a constructive way. Anyway, his defense of us wasn't helpful at all. We still got put into special measures. But, I've always liked that term, boisterous, in a constructive way. So being chatty is a good thing. Lots of discussions. I love that. And I think, that's part of having the experience online. We still get to do some of that. And I think, investing in your development, reflecting, and taking time to do programs like this is really important in your journey. Work will still be there tomorrow. Your 200 emails that you've missed out on the past 2 days, the third day today, will still be there tomorrow. The organization will still function with or without you. So it's really, really important that you take this time for you to figure out what you want, your plans, and what you can take from these past 3 days that you can implement into your work and your management style. Also take this time to figure out what you stand for. We live in very challenging times, and I know you had some amazing speakers over the past 2 days who touched quite a bit on this. And I think it's really important to know what you stand for, your values, what type of leader you are, or your leadership style. But I think sometimes we forget to think about our compromise points. We focus a lot about what we stand for, what will our yeses and nos. But for me, I find that spending some time figuring out my in-betweens is really helpful. We have to make very difficult decisions in the work that we do. And some of these decisions will go against our personal beliefs, our values, etc. But that's the nature of working in a pandemic in the public sector where resources are shrinking. So knowing which elements of your values or which part of your leadership styles, etc., that you're willing to compromise is worth investing some time into, just so because the world is not black and white, and leadership isn't black and white, and your workplace isn't black and white. So to be very black and white about things can be quite difficult in that process. So I have found that actually knowing, some things I'll let go and I'll compromise on because it's far more important things to work on. And that's the hardest bit I find as a leader in general, but a leader in the public sector. And when I was working in local government and I was responsible for the work stream around migration, refugees and asylum seekers, and it was really challenging because our budgets were being cut. And I had to have very difficult conversation with stakeholders and saying that for me, there's plenty of things I'd like to do. But when you've got a very finite amount of money, it becomes a question of what are the must-dos? What am I legally required to do as a local authority, as opposed to what I'd like to do as a local authority? And that was a compromise that I had to make, which went against the black and white elements of my values. But it is a compromise because I believe that actually doing what we had to legally was better than not doing anything at all. So for me, that was my compromise. I was challenged on that, and I'm saying, look, outside of work, you're a community activist. How can you stand for this? But from my perspective, I'm working in an organization that could impact some change and influence some change from within. So that was far more important to me. And the sessions you're having today will help you reflect on what you've picked up over the past 2 days. You'll have some really amazing speakers later on after your session with Fee. You'll have Linda Aspie and Owen Evans, who I found out that he was expelled from school and now he's the head of Estin. All is very fascinating, and that link there. So I might ask him a bit more about that later on. But I will be with you throughout the day, and I'm really looking forward